Good morning, everyone. Welcome to SRIC. I'm Commissioner Ray Johnson, Chair of the SRIC Committee. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, just a quick overview of SRIC and its responsibilities. SRIC is the standing committee of CALEA that is charged with considering and acting upon requests to revise the text of the standards manuals. Following receipt of a request and after consideration and deliberation, SRIC recommends then to the full commission any additions or deletions of existing standards, commentaries, levels of compliance, or the glossary terms. The committee also makes recommendations for the addition of new standards. SRIC meets every Thursday morning of the conference in executive session to conduct the business brought before it since the previous conference. And then on Friday morning, we conduct the public hearing, which we report out on the actions taken by the committee. It is during this public hearing that we provide an open mic session, and we certainly encourage and welcome your comments, questions, or anything of interest that you would we could share with you regarding SRIC and our activities. Then on Friday afternoon, we, at the full business meeting, SRIC will make the appropriate motions to the full commission regarding the actions and the recommendations of this committee. Typically, proposed actions are posted on the CALEA website for our client comment prior to and then forwarded to the full commission for final approval at the next conference. A couple of notes this morning. If you didn't notice, the meeting is being video recorded. That is so we can make it available to those who are not able to be here this morning. Also, what's projected on the screen throughout the meeting this morning will be available on Power DMS in a couple of weeks? In a couple of weeks, so you'll have that available to you also. The committee is assisted this morning by Assessment Manager Karen Shepard and also by Regional Program Manager Randy Scott. So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask Karen if you would please call the roll.
Certainly, my pleasure. Commissioner Anthony? Here. Commissioner Brown? Here. Commissioner Cordner? Here. Commissioner Farrow? Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Kittredge?
Here.
Commissioner Knight?
Here.
Commissioner Middleton?
Here.
Commissioner Purcell?
Here.
Commissioner Ryder-Dove?
Here.
Commissioner Womack? Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Karen. Also, I'd like to take this opportunity, if I may, to introduce to the group two of our commissioners-elect. First, Commissioner-elect Cynthia Coyne. Commissioner Coyne is a state senator from the state of Rhode Island, and Commissioner-elect Marlon Lynch. Commissioner Lynch is the Associate Vice President of Safety and Security for the University of Chicago. So welcome to both of you this morning. And again, thanks to all of you for coming. Our first agenda item this morning is the approval of the minutes from the July 2015 Colorado Springs, Colorado meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? If none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item of business is to review the proposed revision to Communications 4.3.8 relating to psychological examinations. Commissioner Dove.
On the standard, the only change is to make it mandatory across the board. Was the discussion with the APCO-CALEA committee that this was the best thing to do. That was brought to SRIC and moved forward yesterday. I would motion to approve proposed revision to Communication Standard 4.3.8 and send it to the full commission for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the proposed revision to Communications Standard 6.8.7 relating to password construction. This is a minor word change for clarification, and at this time I would entertain a motion to approve the revision to Communication Standard 6.8.7 and send it to the full commission for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the proposed deletion of Communication Standard 3.2.5 relating to medical exams. This was determined by the committee to be a duplicate standard to standards 1.4.7 and 4.3.7. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the deletion of Communication Standard 3.2.5 and to send it to the full commission for deletion.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the proposed revision to Communication Standard 4.3.7 relating to medical exams. This is a word addition to the medical exam standard, adding the words hearing and vision exam. This has been posted to the field, and at this time I would entertain a motion to approve the proposed revision to Communication Standard 4.3.7 and to send it to the full commission for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is a proposed revision to Communication Standard 6.4.6 relating to encoding communications. Commissioner Dove.
We had a request from the field to look at 6.4.6 related to encryption of data. After discussion with within the APCO-CALIA committee as well as at SRIC, we've declined to take any action on that standard.
Is that a motion? I'm sorry.
That would be a motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item was the request for a waiver for Law Enforcement Standard 84.1.6 relating to evidence audits. Commissioner Middleton.
Mr. Chairman, in this particular case, the affected agency, the Tucson Airport Authority, utilizes the services of another law enforcement agency for management and storage of their evidence. The agency that does this is not a CALIA accredited agency. The Tucson Airport Authority does not have the ability to conduct unannounced audits or comply with other standards related to the management of evidence in accordance with the Commission's expectations. They have requested that one of two things occur. One, that we remove the non-compliant status assigned by the assessment team for the relevant standards associated with evidence management because they are not able to comply with them and they do not manage the evidence, or grant them a waiver. In that regard, and following our discussions and review of their request, I move that the request for removal of the non-compliant status and the request for a waiver be denied, and that the Commission and staff continue to work with the agency for a solution that allows them to achieve compliance and remain accredited.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner. The next item is discussion on the Law Enforcement Standard 1.3.11 relating to demonstrating proficiency of electronic controlled weapons. Commissioner Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We received a request from the field to look at Standard 1.3.11 in reference to revising that particular standard. And after further discussion among the committee, we decided to decline that particular request, so the standard will remain as is. I make that in form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move this to the full commission to decline the request for a what was that for?
Electronic control weapon.
No, it was to deny the request, though, right? Okay, I'm sorry. We have a motion on the floor to move this to the full commission for the denial of the request for revision. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Purcell. The next item is discussion on Law Enforcement Standard 33.8.2 relating to training upon promotion. Commissioner Dove.
Okay, this was regarding the wording that did not match between communications and law enforcement standards. And after discussion, it was proposed that the draft language be changed to the agency provides job-related training to all newly promoted. They just took it away.
It's down the bottom.
You saw it
It's
on
at
the
the bottom.
screen.
I'm sorry, I think I surprised you. That was my error. I was
That's
going to
okay, I
handle
just
that.
didn't have that. So anyhow, the motion is to approve the proposed draft language for Communication Standard 5.2.12 and send it to the field for comment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner. That concluded the agenda items, but just as a point of information, I would call upon Commissioner Womack to please give us an update on the activities of the committee that she's been chairing over the past several months, and that is a complete review of the law enforcement chapters and our status at this time. Commissioner Womack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At our conference in March, I was asked to take on a task of chairing a committee of CALEA staff, CALEA commissioners, as well as outside entities representing ICMA, ICP, PERF, the National Sheriff's Association, and NOBLE. The multi-agency, multi-person task force was tasked with taking a look at the 5th edition law enforcement and a complete and total review of the standards. The scope of the review was to look at the standards for their relevancy in what is happening in real time today in our law enforcement environment. With the eye to such things as the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, the an increase of Department of Justice investigations on law enforcement agencies across the nation, a focus on accreditation and standards of best practice that we've seen from both federal and state legislation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We wanted to make sure that the CALEA standards serve our clients well and are relevant and flexible and add the value to the agencies as they continue to be accredited agencies across the nation. The task force consisted of myself, Commissioners Purcell, Middleton, Johnson, Conley, I missed a couple of people yesterday, and a couple of others. Our staff was Karen Shepard, Randy Scott, Travis Parrish, and of course Director Hartley, with representatives from ICP, ICMA, PERF, NOBLE, and the National Sheriff's Association. We met every Friday morning since June to do a complete review of the task force, of the standards. I can say this, and I have, we wanted to make sure from a task force, from an SRIC, and from a commission standpoint that our client agencies are aware of what is happening. I can tell you there have been some significant changes that will be recommended to the law enforcement program. Where we now have 484 standards, we have reduced the number of standards, and that has been through a combination of, combining standards now that didn't make sense to have 2 or 3, so it would be combined into one standard that would be more workable for our agencies to show proofs of compliance, as well as the deletion of some that are simply obsolete. We have also recommended the addition of new standards that meet the environment in which we are working today. The goal was to make the standards relevant as well as flexible, that as our environment continues to change, that the standards remain relevant and don't have to be changed every time somebody's opinion changes on something that happens in law enforcement. We completed our Friday morning meetings 2 weeks ago, and as I've said before, I didn't know what to do with myself this Friday. We met yesterday to finalize some new proposed standards, and we'll be meeting again in January as a task force, to finalize a draft that will be submitted to SRIC, this body, in our March of 2016 conference. Once we have had the SRIC review, the entire 6th edition will be sent to the field for comment. So for those of you that are just waiting with bated breath to see how your world is going to change, you will get that after. Then this is a proposed timeline. You will get that after the March of 2016 conference. I will, to soothe some people's nerves, this will come as the 6th edition is rolled out. There will be a plan for transition to that. For those of you that had to go from 4th to 5th, you should find this to be easier. You will receive the new edition by Power DMS. There will be linkages and bridges and cross-references and crosswalks and everything else that we can, and hopefully the ability to be able to retain documents you already have in your 5th edition proofs that will carry over to new 6th edition. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible on our client agencies, but as well as updating and refreshing the standards and continuing to be the gold standard in law enforcement and maintain best practice. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, just with the caveat that whatever I say today is subject to change after SRIC finishes with the work in March. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any questions of Commissioner Womack? If not, I'd just like to take this opportunity to publicly thank Commissioner Womack for the great job she's done on pulling this all together. It's been a tremendous amount of work, but she's stuck with it and pulled it through, moved us through in fine fashion, and we're looking forward to, as our SRIC, of receiving that final product and then getting it out to the field for your comments. So thank you very much for the work on this effort and your efforts on this assignment. At this time, we would open the floor to comments. We have a microphone here, and we welcome and certainly encourage any input, any questions, any comments, anything that you would care to share with SRIC, or any questions that you might have of our work here. So anyone who has a comment or a question, please approach the microphone. Some of you sat here longer waiting for the meeting to start than the meeting has lasted, so. Yes, sir.
I'll be brief. Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Ed Barnes from Hampton, Virginia Police Department. A question I just thought of on the new edition, the 6th edition, when we went from the 4th to the 5th, as I recall, we were in a 3-year cycle, so it wasn't quite a huge rush to get your files and everything switched over to the new edition. Now that we're going to have a CSM come in annually and inspect us, are we going to be held to that 1 year? We're going to have everything switched over within that 1 year?
Absolutely. No, I'm messing with we are taking that in consideration. A rollout plan will be available, and it will be reasonable as it was from 4th to 5th. So wherever you're at in your cycle, and however you move forward with it will be planned out, and you will be given the appropriate amount of time to make the transition. It won't be expected if it rolls out in January of 17 that you be ready by January of 18.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Now that Mr. Barnes has broken the ice, if everyone would just form a single line to the microphone here. Anyone else? Any comments or questions? Anything further to come before the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, meeting adjourned, thank you.